What if your government sent thousands of armed troops into your city without the governor's permission? No natural disaster, no foreign invasion, just boots on the ground, in your neighborhood, by federal order. That's not a conspiracy, it's happening. Nearly 5,000 Marines and National Guard forces were deployed to Los Angeles, and no one can get a straight answer on what they're allowed to do. Can they detain you, arrest you, use lethal force? The Secretary of Defense won't say. Senators are demanding answers. Protesters are sounding the alarm.
Or to be able to shoot at unarmed protesters in any way. I'm just asking the question. Don't laugh. Like the whole country. And by the way, my colleagues across the aisle.
What is that based on? What evidence would you have that an order like that has ever been given?
Giving that order to your predecessor, to a Republican Secretary of Defense, who I give a lot of credit to because he didn't accept the order. He had more guts and balls than you because he said, I'm not going to send in the uniformed military to do something that I know in my gut isn't right. He was asked to shoot at their legs. He wrote that in his book. That's not hearsay. So your poo-pooing of this, it just shows you don't understand who we are as a country, who we are. And all of my colleagues across the aisle, especially the ones that served, should want an apolitical military and not want citizens to be scared of their own military. I love the military. I served alongside my whole life, so I'm worried about you tainting it. Have you given the order? Mr. Secretary, I said in your hearing, when you had your confirmation hearing, that my biggest concern with you at the helm was the potential use of the military in ways that contradict the Constitution or that taint what I hope we all want, which is an apolitical military. And when I asked you about whether you would accept an order that was actually given to your predecessor, Secretary Esper, Trump's SecDef, to deploy active duty troops against unarmed protesters and to, in Secretary Esper's words, shoot at them, shoot at their legs. You said this was all theoretical. Here we are, a few months later, you've deployed 4,700 troops to Los Angeles and against the wishes of the governor. And my colleague across the aisle was right. It is the first time since 1965 that we have deployed Guard troops without the permission of the governor. In all the instances he laid out, the president had sent in the military to protect protesters, not against the protesters. So you may dismiss it, but I feel like this is a fundamental issue of American democracy. If you love your country and you want an apolitical military, then it should be the last resort, not the first resort in our country to use them. So to get to the non-theoretical, have you authorized the uniformed military to detain or arrest protesters in Los Angeles?
Senator, I would just start by saying you're not a protester if you're throwing concrete
100%.
at law
Arrest those
enforcement
people,
officers.
throw them in the jail, 100%. But what you're doing is something different. Everyone knows this is a political decision, right? So we don't trust that you're using the best interests of the military, certainly, and of democracy on top of that. So have you given the order? That's all I want to know. It's not theoretical. For the U.S. military, not law enforcement. They can arrest all day long. That's their job. Do they have the ability, the uniformed military, to arrest and detain protesters currently today? It's a yes or no thing. Authority.
It's sort of amusing the extent to which the speculation is out there. These troops are given very clear orders.
Then what is the order? Then list it out for us. Be a man, list it out. Did you authorize them to detain or arrest? That is a fundamental issue of democracy. I'm not trying to be a snot here. I'm just trying to get the actual, did you authorize them to do that?
All of these orders and what they're sent there to do are public. They are
okay, so say it. So say it. Yes or no?
I'd like to.
Please, yes or no?
As I've said time and time again through interruption, they're there to protect law enforcement,
do they have
ICE
the ability
officers
to arrest?
who are trying to do their job, deporting illegals who were allowed in by the previous administration.
So they cannot arrest and detain citizens of the United States, the uniformed military.
As we've stated, if necessary, in their own self-defense, they could temporarily detain and hand over to ICE. But there's no arresting going on. And you know this better than you're trying to play political games. There's no arresting of U.S. personnel.
Of the U.S. military against members of the protest. Have you authorized U.S. military cyber tools to investigate people participating in these protests? Yes or no?
Certainly in no way that I'd be aware of.
Okay, that's good. I love that answer. That's great. Have you given the order to be able to shoot at unarmed protesters in any way? I'm just asking the question. Don't laugh. Like the whole country. And by the way, my colleagues across the aisle.
What is that based on? What evidence would you have that an order like that has ever been given?
Giving that order to your predecessor, to a Republican Secretary of Defense, who I give a lot of credit to because he didn't accept the order. He had more guts and balls than you because he said, I'm not going to send in the uniformed military to do something that I know in my gut isn't right. He was asked to shoot at their legs. He wrote that in his book. That's not hearsay. So your poo-pooing of this, it just shows you don't understand who we are as a country, who we are. And all of my colleagues across the aisle, especially the ones that served, should want an apolitical military and not want citizens to be scared of their own military. I love the military. I served alongside my whole life, so I'm worried about you tainting it. Have you given the order? Have you given the order that they can use lethal force against honor? I want the answer to be no. Please tell me it's no. Have you given the order?
Senator, I'd be careful what you read in books and believing it, except for the Bible.
And behind it all, there's a chilling question. Is America's military being used to send a message, and if so, to whom? In a high-stakes Senate hearing, the pressure was on. One senator stared directly at the Secretary of Defense and asked the simplest, most terrifying question imaginable. Did you authorize the troops to arrest or detain civilians? A basic yes or no. But what followed wasn't an answer, it was evasion. The secretary danced around the question, citing clear orders and public information, but refused to actually say what those orders were. Be a man, the senator snapped. List it out. Still no direct answer. That silence said more than any statement could have. And in that silence, millions of Americans heard the sound of democratic norms quietly unraveling. It wasn't just the arrests that raised alarms. The senator pushed further, asking whether the secretary had authorized troops to use lethal force against unarmed protesters. Again, no answer. Just a shrug, a smirk, and a redirect. The secretary acted as if the question was ridiculous. But it wasn't, not when former Defense Secretary Mark Esper revealed in his own book that Trump once asked the military to shoot protesters in the legs. Esper said no. He had the guts to refuse. But now we have a new secretary who won't say whether he would do the same. And that's terrifying. But it gets worse, because while most Americans were focused on the visible deployment of troops, a quieter operation may have been unfolding behind the scenes. Another senator asked a pointed question. Have you authorized the use of cyber tools to investigate protesters? The secretary paused, then denied it. Sort of. Certainly in no way that I'd be aware of, he said. It wasn't a strong no. It was a carefully crafted sentence, leaving just enough room for plausible deniability. And in today's surveillance-heavy world, that kind of vague denial isn't exactly reassuring. Meanwhile, on the streets, those 4,700 troops weren't just maintaining peace. The secretary admitted that they were there to protect federal ICE agents as they carried out deportations. In fact, he said the military could temporarily detain civilians in self-defense, handing them over to ICE afterward. That's not just troubling, it's unprecedented. The military on U.S. soil, participating in immigration crackdowns, that crosses a line the country has long vowed never to cross. And yet here we are. It's not just speculation, it's not just political theater. According to multiple senators, this was the first time since 1965 that troops had been deployed to a state without that state's request or consent. Think about that. Not during 9/11s, not during natural disasters, but now under this administration. The last time this happened was during the civil rights movement, and now it's happening again. Without transparency, without consent, without clarity about what these troops are actually allowed to do. And when asked directly whether he would obey a federal court's ruling on the legality of the deployment, the secretary waffled again. I don't believe district courts should be determining national security policy, he said. Translation: if the court tells him the deployment is illegal, he might ignore it. Unless the president decides to appeal, the secretary implied he'd just continue doing what he's doing. That's not just defiance, it's a direct challenge to the rule of law. So why is all this happening now? The answer may be as simple and as disturbing as politics. The hearing made one thing clear: this isn't about safety, it's about control, it's about sending a message. It's about flexing military muscle in civilian spaces, and it's about creating fear, the kind of fear that keeps people quiet. That makes them think twice before marching, before protesting, before speaking out. One senator laid it out in brutal terms. He called the secretary out for his past scandals, sexual misconduct settlements, failed leadership of veterans organizations, and said flatly, "You are turning the Pentagon into a dysfunctional mess." While the secretary posed for photo ops, the senator said, America's enemies were growing bolder: Russia, Iran, China. The world is getting more dangerous, and yet here we are, sending troops not to foreign battlefields, but to our own cities. And it's not just about what's already happened, it's about what might come next. The senator asked, if ordered to shoot peaceful protesters in the legs, would you obey? And once again the secretary wouldn't answer. He claimed the question was based on a false premise, but we know that premise isn't false, because that exact order was given to his predecessor. The only difference is this secretary hasn't said he'd refuse it. This isn't normal. It's not how democracy works. It's not how the military is supposed to operate. And yet no one at the top is being held accountable. Thousands of troops are patrolling U.S. streets. Federal agents are making arrests. Surveillance tools may or may not be watching protesters. And the one man with the authority to stop it won't give straight answers about what he's done or what he's willing to do next. So we're left with a question: who is the military serving? Is it the Constitution or a single man in power? Because history has shown us what happens when a nation turns its military inward, when it uses its soldiers not to protect freedom, but to crush dissent, when it hides orders behind closed doors and shrugs off court rulings like they don't matter. It never ends well. And here's the truth: most people don't want to face the erosion of democracy doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, with justifications and excuses. It happens when leaders refuse to give clear answers, when they laugh at questions, when they downplay public concern. That's when people stop noticing, that's when they stop asking, and that's when it's already too late. So if you care about the future of this country, if you care about the Constitution, the rule of law, and the role of the military in a free society, you can't look away now. You have to speak up, you have to stay informed, because once the line between civilian and soldier disappears, so does the line between freedom and fear. If this made you think, don't just scroll, like the video, drop a comment below, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because staying silent only helps the ones hoping you won't notice.